Welcome to Coffee and Cleavage.
Welcome. Woo.
I'm Lenny.
Cheers. And I'm Chantal. And with us today, we have a special guest. We have Matt Barr, who is the record holder for world's largest penis. Can I say penis? Can I still say that on this podcast?
Yeah, you can.
I'm like member. I'm sure Matt has a lot to tell us about. So welcome, Matt.
Hello, and yes, as a British person, we have very polite ways of saying penis or equivalent. So you can say member or todger. It's a very British one.
Oh,
I haven't heard that
I haven't
one.
heard that. I know you were British, which I wanted to ask you about. How do you say that again?
Todger is a very British sort of slang.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I was going to say member because I know that's like more appropriate for all of our platforms, but
That's more civilized.
yes, it's more civilized. Absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all, for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate having you on.
Yeah, no problems. I'm happy to answer any questions you got
Yeah.
from yourself or from the listeners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, so there's a lot to unpack here. We're very
No pun intended.
curious. Yes, no pun intended. Sorry. I guess just take us to the beginning. When did you kind of realize that you were different, and how did that kind of shape you early on?
Yeah, it was because I'm an only child, so I didn't have the experience of knowing what it's like in the family or having any of the comparisons. And I grew up. I'm old enough to have grown up without the internet, so I didn't like see a lot of images of naked men or anything beforehand. So I didn't get to really understand how different I was until the gym showers, and that's when you kind of look around and everyone's still very much covering up, so you don't see much, but you get a bit of a gist of it, and then eventually you kind of realize it and go, "Oh my God, this is unusual. How is this going to change me?"
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine that would have been pretty shocking. And wow, how kind of cool is it actually to have grown up without the internet? I know the internet's such a
Right?
big part
Yeah.
of all of our
Yeah.
lives, and here we are on the internet. But it's just kind of unique to have had that opportunity, and maybe that was better then than how that could have been now. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pros and cons, I think. Very, very glad to have actually had to go outside and do things for myself, but a lot of things, particularly like sexual stuff, I couldn't learn because now it's quite simple. You can actually Google things that you wouldn't necessarily get from family or a trusted person. You can ask people about things that are quite private. So it's yeah, there's a lot of improvements, I would say, but also you've been on the internet long enough. There's a lot of weirdos out there and incorrect things. So it's I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. That's very true. There's certainly pros and cons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of.
Definitely.
Wow. Well, tell us a little bit about your book. I know that's a big part of your platform, and tell us how you kind of decided to go that route.
Sure. So I was on a documentary a few years ago, and then people, I was not very confident about it because it's, as someone who is quite shy, it's not a topic I was going to bring up previously. But then I thought it was necessary just to spread some truths around because it's a topic where there's a lot of misinformation. Because particularly, it's very much a thing that men are very worried about in general.
Mhm.
So I was try and assuage some of those fears. So the book is partly, my life story, my experiences, and partly more of a study of the way people have treated penis size over the years, and how, when I grew up, again, this is without the internet, there were a lot of ideas that, bigger the better, because there were no female voices in the media really at that point to say, no, wait a minute, there's a lot more facets than, having a big dick doesn't make you, irresistible. You've got to actually be a good person or, have other elements to you. So it's all about trying to basically say, don't worry about it. Don't worry about your size. It's fine. But also, it's very interesting just to see how phallocentric it used to be in terms of it was kind of the golden ticket to have a big one compared to nowadays when it's a lot of people would say, oh, it's a downside, which it is in a lot of cases.
Well, I was just about to ask, what have been some of your partner's reactions when they see you for the first time?
The screaming is just some of the reactions,
Screaming.
but
Yeah.
I've had some screams. the occasional running away. Usually, I mean, I've been in a situation, typically I try and kind of pre-warn a bit without being creepy. If it's, if things are going in that direction, I'll try and pre-warn. A lot of them will also have heard, rumors or things, where it's a friend of a friend hook up, then at least, you have, they're a bit prepared.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of it is just a case of how do you make this work? Because there's a lot of practical considerations to take into account.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, wow, that would be really challenging because you seeing even the friend of the friend, maybe that's better because, like, their friend told them, like, kind of what to expect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a thing. Wow.
Yeah, with dating apps, it's a lot harder because you can't really, put that without being an absolute creep. You can't put that front and center. So you have to work out, get that compatibility first, and then if things go well, that's when you have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. I see what you're saying about how like it's like the bigger the better, and I do feel like a lot more conversations about sex and sexuality has become a lot more normal in
Mm,
modern society to where people are like, oh, it's okay if it is average or smaller. It's how you use it and all these things. But I think that for a lot of men and our platforms and we have a lot of male followers, a lot of
Mhm.
them are like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
we would do anything to have it be, like, as big as absolutely
Yeah. They
possible.
envy the
They
guys.
envy the
Yeah.
guys. They're like they wanna know, like, like, how big is, like, the biggest that you've seen, you know?
Yes.
Like, they're dying to know. They're fascinating, and so it's kind of
yeah,
it's
but it is
interesting to
mostly the men.
see.
Yeah, exactly. They're the
Yes,
ones
it
who
is
are
mostly the
curious.
women. It is the
Yeah,
men who are like, "Oh, well, I would love to have a huge fucking dick."
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
You know? So,
yeah.
um
And the more women you speak to, the less you find that's really the case. Like in my experience, it's more like maybe 5% of the women I've known, even then, are the ones who have been, particularly, the phrase size queen is
mhm,
maybe a loaded term, but that's some way to describe someone. But because I think of it as being more of a fetish thing as opposed to like what you need to have to be like,
um
have good
mhm.
sex. It's more like that's an element of the physical enjoyment, the visual, all the aspects, psychological aspect of it. So those things, some women, but again, a minority, do find very appealing. But obviously, the vast majority couldn't care less.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
very interesting.
Yeah, that is very.
So, with the whole fetishizing part of it, I mean, clearly that is, and have you kind of been in relationships where that was kind of the forefront, where someone did purely it was a fetish thing for them, or have you been in relationships where it's like relationship first and then they accept that and it's bonus?
Yeah, I've been in both types. I think certainly when I was younger, I think everyone who is above average, so we say, does have go through a period where they get a bit of an ego boost. Or they enjoy the fruits of it, I suppose, shall we say? And then at that point, you do end up meeting people who perhaps were using you for nefarious needs. They're not really thinking about you as a person. They're using you for your body. And I think sometimes you think that's part of it's like if you're dating a rich person or something, that's part of the deal, and the relationship. So I had to kind of it's quite strange to get that mentally prepare for that yourself for that and get your mind around it that you are having your personality kind of completely ignored, or they'd rather it be completely gone and you just be a body, like more of a sex toy type thing than a person. So it gives you a bit of an self-esteem uh, damage when that happens. But again, I've had loving relationships as well. So it's very much a case of you take it as it comes. Like everyone can have a bad relationship. Um, and like you say, there'll be men out there who say, "Oh, I'd love to be taken advantage of," but it's you know, the fantasy is different than reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, amen. We say
I
that
could
so
see
much on
that.
this podcast that
Mhm.
often fantasy is often, you know, just better as a fantasy versus reality
Reality,
because
yeah.
there's just a lot more logistics to that. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah, that's
guess
what I always say.
yeah.
It's like, well, the men who are like, "Oh, I want to be the biggest ever," they're thinking about a few seconds or a few minutes of their lives, like outside the bedroom, perhaps, where they're in the shower or something, and they get looks or something, and they're like that. They don't think about what it's like day to day. When they're just trying to go to work or driving around, go to the shops. Uh, those
Yeah.
things aren't part of the male fantasy for this sort of thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I
makes
think
Yeah.
so much sense. That makes so much sense.
It
So,
does.
with that kind of in mind, like, obviously, you seem like a very like, you have your head on your shoulders. You seem like a very, down to earth person. And you've obviously lived with this, and I'm sure it's had positive and negative effects on your life
Mhm.
and your whole life as a whole. Do you feel that if you were smaller, would your life be easier? Or are you happy with where you are? You at an acceptance place?
I'm at an acceptance place, but it always feels a bit self-pitying to go, oh, well, life would be great if this was there. I think there's always the case of if you are in any way different, you do wonder if I had been normal in any respect, would that have changed things? Like, there's definitely certain relationships I've had that may have lasted longer if there weren't incompatibility issues. So I do always wonder about that. But
Mhm.
again, there's also the case of what if it was incredibly small, and then you're like, do I have would that come with other baggage that I wouldn't be prepared for, or stuff like that? It's very difficult to, I don't want to put all my blame on part of my body that I have no control over. Ultimately, so I've tried to be fairly chill with it in the grand scheme of things because you know while I've looked into surgery, kind of have to live with it basically.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I was gonna say, what would you say is the top misconception about you? And do you have any advice for men listening who may be insecure about their size?
I think the big misconception is that kind of fantasy aspect that you are living like a porn star day to day just
Yeah.
because you're big, and it's very different. I mean, I think like when you think about a porn set, it's not so much even about size, even bigger than average or proportionally bigger than average, shall we say. But most of them aren't like huge, huge because there's logistics in play in terms of getting aroused and fitting and things like that, which make things more complicated than they would if you were average or normal. So a lot
Mhm.
of these aspects that are fantasized for the men because they think, wow, this happens and you've got this, then you just whip it out and then everyone's going to fall over you. Like, obviously, that's not how women work. So you've got to be like realistically, don't think like that and don't think it's some kind of key to a better life.
Mhm.
There are, like I say, there's some perks to it, but there's a lot of negatives as well. And you've got to go bear that in mind. And anyone who is thinking that they'd love to live like that, just they're not thinking about the big picture, I would say.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
so much
It
sense because
does.
you're just thinking about the fantasy, like you said. You're thinking about those few couple minutes of your life versus, like, living with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I was like, "Man, my life would've been so much better if I would've been 5'11" because I could have done this and this and this," you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Just an example, but yes, I that's so what would you say one thing is that's just unexpectedly, like, awesome about having that?
Yeah, what are the
What are the
pros and the
pros?
cons?
Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
know I feel like we
Yeah.
got a
Well,
good
we know the
picture of the
cons.
cons, but,
Yeah.
like, what are the positives for you?
Um, that's a difficult thing to say without sounding very arrogant. I feel like it always you're bragging about,
That's
yeah,
okay.
check this out. I mean, selfishly, that you do sometimes get that moment of the ego boost, like, oh, like it's not a surprise even me looking down. You're like, oh wow, that's there, and it's sometimes a nice thing to see when you do that as well. And obviously, the fact that it's quite easy as from a male point of view, and I think this is part of the male fantasy. Like a lot of men kind of do get kind of ignored and don't get big reactions, even if they are. So it's like I do have those opportunities that a lot of men wouldn't um, as well. So there are like benefits like that. It's given me a lot more openness as well in terms of some of these sexual matters because I'm say a fairly introverted, nerdy kind of guy, and I don't think I'd have worked so much on my bedroom skills if I was kind of average because you can kind of just do the routine. You could do basic kind of in-out quickie stuff. Whereas because there's so much to think about when there's logistics involved, you've got to kind of work out, do a lot of foreplay. You've got to do all this stuff, which it comes with a lot of perks from that
Mhm.
point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're big on, foreplay whenever we're talking about sex.
Yeah.
So just from your male perspective and kind of your unique, niche, if you will, what do you think is, like, the best amount of foreplay? Like, is there a good time frame that men should spend on foreplay?
I don't know if I'm the best person to ask that in terms of. I think my requirements are slightly higher in terms of
Yeah.
like, I think it very depends. I think it's partly obviously that there's the physiological thing. So I think you need minimum 15 minutes. I think for anyone basically, like, and then even if they're a quickie, probably about that. But I think ultimately a lot of it, I think for the average guy, is gonna be more like psychological as well. Like if she's really in the mood, then you don't need as much foreplay. If you're both just sort of a bit like, oh, I want to do it, but we're a bit tired or hungover or whatever, then you need a lot more to get your bodies kind of synced up. I think a lot of it is just kind of getting your bodies in, yeah, kind of connected as much as possible and being prepared for what's going to come.
Mhm.
So there's no right answer. I think it's really about couples trying to work it out for themselves. And I think the main thing is to explore that more than anything else. I'd love to give a precise scientific number of what's worked for me, but it's varied so much. Like I've been hours with some women, and it's not been enough to do much. And then sometimes it's been fairly painless to get things started. Say 15 minutes. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It really just does depend. But a lot
Yeah,
of people
yeah.
ask us like really specific
They
questions on
do,
this podcast. They're like, "Well, how
yes.
long should I be doing this and how long should I be doing that?" And
Yeah.
it's like it is a lot of kind of ebb and flow and figuring out what works for
yeah.
you
But it's a bit
individually.
like when people asking about, they want the quick solution, they want the easy answer. They think, having a big one's going to solve things. They think doing the right amount of foreplay is going to do things. And ultimately, I would say it's always about just like, it's such sex is always a thing between, two or more people, and you have to prepare for the people involved, and
Yeah.
that's going to be very different for everyone.
What is the hardest everyday task your size complicates?
It's a tough question, isn't that? I think like dressing is honestly the hardest thing. Like trying to find suitable clothing. Like there's so
Mhm.
many things you just can't wear
Yeah,
because of the situation.
yeah.
So yeah, it's quite a shame with a lot of wardrobe choices I might want to have. I thankfully was never in the skinny jeans era, so
Never in
that
the
was
skinny
never an
jean
option.
era.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't even know I you see, people just don't think about those type of things,
Yeah.
yeah,
like, just getting dressed in the morning. That's just
yeah,
a
and like
normal thing.
sports as well. Obviously, that's kind of a difficult one. Like I've been, you know, kicked out of a gym before because I thought I was showing too much because of when I was jogging. So it's that
Oh,
sort of thing
yeah.
you always consider about.
Mhm. I was
Yeah,
wondering about that, like running, is that
like,
uncomfortable?
that would
Yeah.
be I would imagine that would
Yeah.
be uncomfortable.
Yes,
It's
it's
uncomfortable to run with boobs.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's very similar,
exactly.
that sort of thing. To do with
Yeah.
the friction burn situations, you got to prepare for that. I've got my own treadmill now, so I don't have to go out anything. So but that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a home gym and a home treadmill means I don't have
I mean,
to
that's
risk
perfect.
that.
I work out at home too. I prefer
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely get the podcast on,
Yep.
enjoy it.
Yes. Let's see.
Yeah, it really is fascinating. I guess one question that I feel like fans of ours for sure will want to know is have you I mean, obviously you've considered not to do porn up to this point.
Yes.
And can you kinda, like, walk us through, like, your thought on that, and if you have a view on porn in particular, or a view about you doing porn specifically to you? Both, I guess.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it. Well, I thought about it. I've never really
Mm.
been convinced about it. Again, this is part of growing up kind of pre-internet. And like again, if I was 20 years younger, growing up in the time of OnlyFans and stuff, where you have so much autonomy, so much ability to create your own content and sort of choose how much you wanted to do and when. That's a very different market than when I was younger, where realistically, again, obviously it's a bit different partly as well because I know that my situation would be mostly promoting to men, which nothing wrong with that, but it's not something that I'm very immediately comfortable with. Um, having the gay market, and I wouldn't have to work out how to position myself for that. And then you kind of expected to do like male on male stuff. And it's like, particularly 20 years ago, the only real ways to get into the industry would be doing like male on male stuff, which I wasn't particularly interested in. I think it's just also the risk is always just the shelf life aspect of it. Uh, like you don't know how long that's going to last ultimately. And when
Yeah.
I was, like I say, I try to have a good head of my shoulders and try to focus on making sure that even if something happens realistically, that I can still support myself and do things. And I don't want to rely on my body. I feel like that would be, there's anything wrong with it. But I think it's from my self esteem point of view, I've always just thought I don't want to have that be m- my identity entirely. I feel that would become my identity if
Yeah.
that's the path I went down.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we understand that maybe more than,
absolutely.
like, most people
Mm,
100%,
Yes,
because we 'cause
definitely.
we're both content creators,
Mhm.
yeah,
but we choose not to do porn, and a lot of people are always like, "When are you gonna do porn?" You know, and we're
Yeah,
like, "There's nothing wrong with it.
yeah,
yeah,
Absolutely nothing wrong with those who wanna do it, but just not what I want to
yeah.
do for
yeah,
myself."
exactly. You've got to know your
Mhm.
own kind of boundaries and stuff. I do think it's kind of a shame people say people treat it. I'm sure they treat you the kind of the same way. You think, well, we're a family, we want to see this. We deserve that time to a degree. You know, they're thinking about their needs rather than your needs and stuff like that. And just because you're attracted to women doesn't mean you have people want to. You should be showing yourself naked to the world. And I feel the same way about myself. People just because I have a gift doesn't mean I should be naked all the time. It's that sort of thing. I want to keep it somewhat private, as it until recently. That's kind of what I've been doing. But
Mhm.
like I say, I've been trying to the public to try and just discuss the issues with this as opposed to flaunt myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're kinda coming at it from more of an educational standpoint.
Exactly,
Definitely.
that's the way I was kind of keen to do it, and that's why I did it from the book point of view. Because a lot of people, again, when the only time they've heard of someone in my situation speaking, it's from a porn star probably, and
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
porn star has a very specific agenda. They're bigging themselves up. They're saying it's the best thing ever because that's part of their persona as
Mhm.
a sexual performer. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say here's what it's like in the whole scheme of things, which is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's just I think it's a skill to be, a porn star or any of those things. Like it requires a certain mindset and a certain skill set. I don't know if I have that because I did some photos for the book. I found it very uncomfortable just to get like photographed naked and stuff. It's
Yeah,
not,
what was that
not
like for
natural.
you to shoot nude for your book?
Yeah, it was not. It was not natural. We did a few very like arty shots beforehand that were sort of semi,
Mhm.
provocative, but didn't show too much. And then
Yeah.
a few months ago, we did some proper like boudoir shoots, I guess you'd call them.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was so we did like some. We've got some potential covers for the book. So the idea is to maybe have the cover and then have a sticker over the area, so they can be removed when you get home, but we have it on the bookshelf in the meantime. But
Oh, what that's
Yeah. That
creative.
is,
That's
yeah.
yeah,
very
we're
I like
still working on
creative.
that.
how whether we can get away with that, but if we can, that'd be quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's very
definitely.
cool. You know, I w it is a big thing, if you've never done something like that. Like, I'll never forget my very first time ever shooting nude. It was absolutely terrified,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
just the nerves and then you, like, know that people see it and
Yeah.
everything.
How many people were in the shoot? Was it just you and a photographer, or
For my very first one, it was actually just me and a female photographer. It was a
yeah?
test at Playboy. Actually at, like, the Playboy Mansion, and I was absolutely terrified, but she made me feel really comfortable, and, I actually kind of felt a little bit empowered after. Did you feel like you felt that way after when you were just
I
sitting
didn't
with
really. I thought, oh, I
yourself?
did it all wrong. It's just natural. It's like I wouldn't say empowered. I say I feel I got through this okay. It was
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
because it's very
that's
difficult when you think, okay, this might be on the cover of a book that's going around as well. Because I'm sure you're the same. You're like, where's this going to go? What's it going to be like? Which one's they going to take it? And I'm quite goofy looking. And I don't have the. I'm not very photogenic, like facially. I was a very like weird faces. So I'm glad they got a few good ones where I look quite normal and serious. So that was,
Well, I think that just is like that's the photogenic thing, the face. That's just comfort. That's just you learning
yeah.
how to be comfortable just with yourself and being photographed. I'm sure that's quite the journey. So
Yeah.
when did you write this book?
It's still kind of in process to a
Oh,
degree. I'm
okay.
still editing bits of it. I started it in 2022, sort of the start of 2023 and in 2022. So it's kind of been sort of work in progress, like I say, because more stuff's happened since then. So things like having getting my member cast for the Penis Museum in Iceland. Like that's a
Oh,
Ah,
chapter in the book
I
as
nice.
was
well.
I would
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
that. I was
Yeah.
like nervous. I'm like, "Oh, wow. What was that experience like?"
That was weird. It was weirder than the photo shoot in some ways, but it was more somehow more comfortable because you kind of get more. Once you've done it, it's you get the material, well, and the helper that they had from the museum come over and got it all ready and everything. So that kind of made it a bit easier. But I got to actually insert it into the tube myself and everything. So and then we did it and it turned out okay. So very
Well,
definitely a bit weird to get it on display. Obviously, it's very strange to do that. But again, we can say it's a bit of an ego boost to think, oh, it's museum worthy.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
museum worthy. I feel like you should have that on
Definitely.
a shirt. It's museum worthy.
If they sold it, yeah.
That sounds like a good tagline for the
It
book.
does.
That's great. So this book has been a process, it sounds like, and you're kind of going through the journey. When do you have an idea of when your book is going to be published?
Hopefully next year. We're having some debates with publishers right now, and maybe switching publishers basically because there's a lot of it's a topic that's very interesting and it's difficult to find the right people to market it sometimes, I think the original people who spoke to it, they've gotten a bit of cold feet. There's been a change of management. They're a bit like, ooh, this is a bit edgy as a topic. So um, but I'm hopeful next year we're gonna get something on the
Yeah.
shelves.
Yeah. Well, we would
Yeah.
love a copy when you
Right.
when you
Yeah.
have your
That's
final book. We would love
Definitely.
that.
We
yeah, I'll send
would.
you a link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So where can listeners follow and learn more about you?
So the website for the book is biggestpenisbook.com.
Mhm.
There's a mailing list there. So sign up if you want to find out more.
Okay. Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. It was a pleasure to have you here
Yeah, thank
and
you.
good luck with everything. We'll
Nice.
be on the lookout for that book.
Yeah.
Cheers. Like I say, I'll send you a link. You can do a little book club eventually when it comes out.
That sounds
Awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.